He never expected her hands to linger. He never expected her eyes to soften. But when CEO Celeste Hartley stepped close, her perfume swirling with the scent of ambition and midnight secrets, she didn't just fix his tie, she let her fingers trace the line of his jaw, her voice a low electric whisper. "You've changed, and I like it." In that moment, the office walls faded, and for the first time in years, single dad Ethan Cole felt seen, not as a cog in the corporate machine, but as a man. What happened next would shatter every rule, every boundary, and every lie they'd both been living. Ethan Cole had always believed in keeping his head down. In a world of glass towers and sharper elbows, he learned that the best way to survive was to be invisible. He was the guy who arrived early, left late, and never made waves. The one who remembered birthdays, fixed the copy machine, and brought donuts on Fridays. The one who, after his wife died, quietly became both mother and father to his daughter, Sophie. But invisibility had a cost. It meant swallowing his own needs, shelving his ambitions, and living in the shadow of people like Celeste Hartley, the youngest CEO in the company's history. A woman with a reputation for brilliance and ice. She was the kind of leader who could silence a boardroom with a glance, who wore power like a second skin, who never, ever let anyone close. Ethan had watched her from afar for 3 years, admiring her drive, her discipline, the way she seemed untouchable. He never imagined she'd know his name, let alone notice the way his hands shook when he poured his morning coffee, or the way he sometimes lingered in the hallway outside her office, just to catch a glimpse of her as she swept past. But everything changed the day of the charity gala. It was supposed to be just another event, another night of forced smiles, awkward small talk, and rubber chicken dinners. Ethan had only agreed to go because HR needed a few family faces for the company's new diversity campaign. He'd rented a suit, polished his shoes, and practiced his smile in the mirror, trying to look like a man who belonged in a room full of millionaires. Sophie, 8 years old and fearless, had insisted on helping him get ready. She'd chosen his tie, a deep blue silk, the color of twilight, and made him promise to stand up straight and look people in the eye. He'd laughed, ruffled her hair, and told her he'd do his best. The gala was held in a ballroom that glittered with chandeliers and the low hum of ambition. Ethan felt out of place from the moment he arrived. He stepped to the edges of the room, sipping club soda and scanning the crowd for familiar faces. He was halfway through a conversation with the head of accounting when he saw her, Celeste, in a black dress that caught the light like a secret, her hair swept up, her eyes scanning the room with practiced detachment. Their eyes met for a split second. She looked away first. Ethan told himself it meant nothing. He was just another face in the crowd, another name on a spreadsheet. But as the night wore on, he found himself watching her, drawn to the way she moved through the room, graceful, controlled, always just out of reach. He was about to leave when he heard her voice behind him. "Mr. Cole." He turned, startled. She was standing closer than he expected, her expression unreadable. "Miss Hartley," he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. She glanced at his tie, then back at his eyes. "That's a good color on you." He felt his cheeks flush. "My daughter picked it out." Celeste's lips curved just barely. "She has excellent taste." For a moment, they stood in silence, the noise of the gala fading around them. Ethan felt something shift, a current of possibility, electric and dangerous. "Would you walk with me?" she asked. He nodded, too surprised to speak. They moved through the crowd, past clusters of executives and their spouses, out onto a terrace overlooking the city. The air was cool, scented with rain and the distant promise of spring. Celeste leaned against the railing, her gaze fixed on the skyline. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. Ethan hesitated. "Sometimes, I think. After my wife died, I stopped knowing who I was supposed to be. I just tried to keep going." For Sophie, she nodded, her eyes distant. People expect so much. They see what they want to see. They never ask what you want. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the cracks beneath the surface, the exhaustion, the loneliness, the hunger for something real. I see you, he said quietly. She turned, her eyes searching his. Do you? He nodded. I do. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, without warning, she reached up and adjusted his tie, her fingers lingering at his throat. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent. You've changed, she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. And I like it. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. Celeste stepped back, her mask slipping back into place. Good night, Mr. Cole. He watched her disappear into the crowd, his world spinning. That night, as he tucked Sophie into bed, Ethan replayed the moment over and over, wondering what it meant, what would happen next, and whether he was ready to step out of the shadows at last. Ethan woke the next morning with a strange sense of anticipation humming beneath his skin. The memory of Celeste's touch, the way her fingers had lingered at his collar, replayed in his mind like a secret he wasn't sure he was allowed to keep. He moved through his morning routine on autopilot, packing Sophie's lunch, braiding her hair, making sure she had her favorite book in her backpack. But every time he caught his reflection in the hallway mirror, he saw something different in his own eyes. A question, a possibility. At the bus stop, Sophie chattered about her upcoming school play, her voice bright and full of life. Ethan listened, nodding at the right moments, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the terrace, to the city lights, to the way Celeste had looked at him as if she saw something no one else did. When the bus arrived, Sophie hugged him tight. You'll be there tonight, right, Daddy? For the rehearsal, he smiled, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As the bus pulled away, Ethan felt a pang of guilt. He promised himself that Sophie would always come first, that he wouldn't let work or anything else get in the way. But now, for the first time in years, he wanted something for himself, too. He wanted to know what it would feel like to be seen, to be wanted, to be more than just the reliable single dad. The office was buzzing when he arrived. The aftermath of the gala was everywhere. Rumors, whispers, speculation about who had talked to whom, who had made a fool of themselves, who might be in line for a promotion. Ethan kept his head down, as always, but he felt the weight of eyes on him, the sense that something had shifted. He was halfway through his first cup of coffee when his phone buzzed. A calendar invite. Meeting with CEO Hartley. 10 a.m. Executive Suite. Ethan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He'd never been summoned to the executive suite before. He checked his tie, still the deep blue Sophie had chosen, and tried to steady his breathing. At 9:58, he rode the elevator to the top floor, his palms sweating. The executive suite was a world apart from the rest of the building, quiet, immaculate, with floor-to-ceiling windows. That made the city look small and far away. Celeste's assistant greeted him with a polite smile. Miss Hartley will see you now. Ethan stepped into the office, his nerves jangling. Celeste was standing by the window, her back to the door. She didn't turn as he entered. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice cool and measured. Thank you for coming. He cleared his throat. Of course, Miss Hartley, she turned then, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, the mask slipped, and he saw the woman from the terrace, the one who had whispered to him in the dark. I wanted to thank you for your work on the charity initiative, she said, her tone formal. Your attention to detail was impressive. Ethan nodded, unsure what to say. Thank you. I just tried to do my part. Celeste moved closer, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She stopped just in front of him, close enough that he could see the faint freckles on her cheekbones, the way her lashes cast shadows on her skin. Most people don't notice the small things, she said quietly. But you do. You see what others miss. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. "I try." She reached up, her fingers brushing his tie again, straightening it with deliberate care. "You've changed since you started here," she murmured, her eyes searching his. "You're not hiding anymore." He swallowed hard. "Maybe I just needed a reason to stop." Celeste's lips curved, a real smile this time. "Maybe you did." For a moment, the air between them was charged, electric. Ethan wanted to reach for her to close the distance, but he held himself back. This was her world, her rules. He didn't want to overstep. Celeste stepped back, the moment broken. "There's a new project starting next week. I'd like you to lead it." Ethan blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "Double quotes you. I think you're ready." He hesitated. "What about the others?" "I'm not. I've never." She cut him off with a look. "You're the right person for the job. Trust me." Ethan nodded, his mind spinning. "Thank you, Ms. Hartley. I won't let you down." She smiled again, softer this time. "I know you won't." As he left her office, Ethan felt a strange mix of exhilaration and fear. He'd spent so long trying not to be noticed, trying not to want too much. Now, suddenly, he was at the center of something he didn't fully understand. Back at his desk, he found it hard to concentrate. His co-workers glanced at him with new curiosity, their whispers just out of earshot. He tried to focus on his work, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Celeste. The way she looked at him, the way her touch had lingered, the way she'd said, "You've changed." "Then I like it." That evening, Ethan made it to Sophie's rehearsal just in time. She spotted him from the stage, her face lighting up with joy. Afterward, as they walked home together, she slipped her hand into his. "Did you have a good day, Daddy?" she asked. He smiled, squeezing her hand. "I think I did, sweetheart. I think I really did." As they walked beneath the city lights, Ethan realized that change wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let himself want more. The days that followed felt like a dream Ethan was afraid to wake from. The new project was a whirlwind, meetings, deadlines, decisions that mattered. For the first time, people listened. When he spoke, his ideas weren't just noted, they were implemented. He found himself working late, not out of obligation, but out of excitement. Each evening, he'd call Sophie to say goodnight, promising her pancakes on Saturday and a trip to the zoo when the project was done. But beneath the rush of accomplishment, another current ran, one that had nothing to do with spreadsheets or strategy. It was the memory of Celeste's touch, the way her eyes lingered on him in meetings, the subtle shift in her posture when he entered a room. She was still the CEO, still composed and commanding, but now there was something else, a softness, a spark, a secret only they shared. One evening, as the office emptied and the city outside turned gold with sunset, Ethan found himself alone in the conference room, reviewing a presentation. The door opened quietly. Celeste stepped inside, her heels silent on the carpet. "Burning the midnight oil, Mr. Cole?" she asked, her voice teasing. He looked up, surprised but pleased. "Just trying to make sure everything's perfect for tomorrow." She crossed the room, her gaze never leaving his. "You don't have to be perfect, you know. You just have to be real." Ethan set down his pen, his heart thudding. "That's not always easy." Celeste smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "No, it isn't. But I think you're better at it than you realize." She sat on the edge of the table, close enough that Ethan could see the faint shimmer of her lipstick, the way her hair curled at her neck. For a moment, the air between them was thick with possibility. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why did you choose me for this project?" She considered him, her expression thoughtful. "Because you see people, you listen, you care. That's rare in this world, Ethan. And it's something I need on my team." He looked down, embarrassed. "I'm just trying to do my job." She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. You're doing more than that. You're changing things. You're changing me. Ethan met her gaze, searching for the truth in her eyes. I don't want to be just another name on your list, Celeste. She shook her head, her voice soft. You're not. You never were. The silence stretched, comfortable and charged. Ethan felt the urge to close the distance, to let himself want what he'd been denying for so long. But he hesitated, afraid of crossing a line, of losing everything he'd worked for. Celeste seemed to sense his uncertainty. She stood, smoothing her skirt. Walk me to my car. He nodded, gathering his things. They rode the elevator in silence, the tension between them palpable. In the parking garage, Celeste paused by her car, turning to face him. Thank you, Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything. He smiled, his nerves fading. Thank you for seeing me. She stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest. I see you, Ethan. All of you. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the hum of the city, the glow of the streetlights, the warmth of her touch. Ethan leaned in, his breath mingling with hers, and for the first time he let himself hope. But Celeste pulled back, her eyes shining. Not yet, she whispered. We have to be careful. He nodded, understanding. The world they lived in was full of rules, of expectations, of people who would never understand. But the promise was there, unspoken and undeniable. As she drove away, Ethan stood in the garage, his heart full. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be obstacles, doubts, moments of fear. But for the first time, he was ready to face them, not just for Sophie, but for himself. That night, as he tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. You look happy, Daddy. He kissed her forehead, smiling. I am, sweetheart. I really am. And as he turned out the light, Ethan realized that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments, a touch, a look, a whispered promise in the dark. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance, one step forward, 2 steps back. Ethan and Celeste moved through the office with practiced professionalism, careful not to let their growing connection show. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. Every meeting, every hallway encounter, every shared glance was charged with meaning. The project thrived under Ethan's leadership, and the team began to notice. People who had once overlooked him now sought his advice, eager to be part of something that felt new, alive, and different. Celeste watched from her corner office, her gaze lingering on Ethan more often than she intended. She admired his patience, his kindness, the way he brought out the best in those around him. She found herself looking for excuses to call him in, to ask his opinion, to share a moment of quiet in the chaos. The walls she'd built around herself for years began to crack, letting in light she hadn't realized she missed. One Friday evening, as the office emptied and the city outside glowed with the promise of the weekend, Celeste sent Ethan a message. Can you stop by my office before you leave? He hesitated only a moment before replying. On my way, he found her standing by the window, the skyline stretching out behind her. She turned as he entered, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. Close the door, she said quietly. He did, his heart pounding. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, but not uncomfortable. It was full of everything they hadn't said. Celeste crossed the room, stopping just in front of him. She reached up, her fingers adjusting his tie with slow, deliberate care. Her touch was gentle, but there was nothing casual about it. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. You've changed, she said, her voice low. You're not the man who started here 3 years ago. Ethan swallowed, his hands trembling at his sides. Neither are you. She smiled, a real, vulnerable smile. Maybe we changed each other. He reached for her hand, holding it between his. I like who I am when I'm with you. Celeste's eyes shimmered. I like who I am too. For a moment, the world outside faded away. There was only the two of them, standing in the quiet hush of the office, the city lights painting patterns on the walls. Ethan leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. I want this, he whispered, but I don't want to hide. Celeste nodded, her breath warm against his cheek. Neither do I. But we have to be careful. People will talk. The bored, he cut her off gently. Let them. I've spent too long living for other people. I want to live for myself now. For Sophie. For us. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. I'm scared, Ethan. He brushed the tear away, his touch tender. So am I. But I think we're braver together. They stood like that for a long time, holding on to each other, letting the fear and hope and longing settle between them. When they finally parted, it was with a promise, unspoken, but understood. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of Sophie's laughter. She was in the kitchen, making pancakes, her hair a wild halo around her face. He joined her, helping her flip the batter, their laughter filling the apartment. For the first time in years, he felt light, unburdened, free. Later that day, he took Sophie to the park. They ran through the grass, chased each other around the playground, and lay on their backs, watching the clouds drift by. Ethan told her stories about when he was a boy, about dreams and second chances, about the courage it takes to start over. As the sun set, his phone buzzed. A message from Celeste. Dinner tonight? My place. Just us? He smiled, his heart racing. I'll bring dessert, he replied. That evening, after dropping Sophie off with her favorite babysitter, Ethan made his way to Celeste's apartment. She greeted him at the door, her hair down, her eyes bright with anticipation. They cooked together, sharing stories and laughter, the barriers between them falling away with every passing moment. After dinner, they sat on the balcony, the city spread out below them. Celeste leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. I never thought I'd find this, she whispered, not after everything. He kissed her hair, holding her close. Me neither. But I'm glad we did. They sat in comfortable silence, the future stretching out before them, uncertain, but full of promise. In the weeks that followed, they navigated the challenges together. There were difficult conversations with the board, awkward moments with colleagues, and nights when the weight of the world felt too heavy to bear. But through it all, they held on to each other, refusing to let fear dictate their lives. Sophie adored Celeste, and Celeste, in turn, found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She joined them for Sunday breakfast, cheered at Sophie's school play, and learned to let go of the need for perfection. Ethan, for his part, discovered a strength he hadn't known he possessed. He stood up for himself at work, advocated for his team, and embraced the messy, beautiful chaos of life. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Celeste stopped, turning to face him. You've changed, she said, her voice full of wonder. And I love it. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. So have you. And I love you. They kissed beneath the city lights, their hearts full, their fears forgotten. For the first time, they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, brave and unafraid to love. That night, after the city had quieted and the world outside their window was nothing but a blur of distant lights, Ethan and Celeste found themselves alone in her apartment, the air between them thick with anticipation. The dinner dishes were forgotten, laughter echoing in the kitchen, replaced by a silence that was anything but empty. Celeste stood by the window, the moonlight tracing the curve of her bare shoulder. Ethan crossed the room, his heart pounding, every step a promise. He reached for her, his hands gentle but sure, and she turned to him, her eyes dark with longing and trust. He cupped her face, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. She leaned into his touch, her breath catching as his lips found hers, soft at first, then deeper, more urgent. The world outside faded, leaving only the heat of their bodies, the press of skin on skin, the slow, deliberate exploration of new territory. Clothes slipped away, barriers falling with them. Ethan's hands mapped the landscape of her back, her hips, her thighs, memorizing every inch. Celeste's fingers tangled in his hair, her mouth tracing a path down his neck, her laughter dissolving into a gasp as he lifted her, carrying her to the bed. They moved together, a rhythm as old as time, each touch a question and an answer, each kiss a confession. For the first time, Celeste let herself be vulnerable, her walls crumbling in the safety of Ethan's arms. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to want, to take, to give without fear. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, the city's glow painting silver patterns across their skin. Celeste rested her head on Ethan's chest, her fingers drawing lazy circles over his heart. I never thought I'd feel this way again, she whispered. Ethan kissed her forehead, his voice rough with emotion. You make me feel alive, Celeste. Like I'm finally home. She smiled, her eyes shining in the darkness. Promise me we won't hide anymore. He pulled her closer, their bodies fitting together perfectly. No more hiding. Not from each other. Not from the world. Outside, the city pulsed with life. But inside, in the quiet sanctuary of their love, Ethan and Celeste discovered a new beginning. One built on trust, desire, and the courage to be seen completely by someone who finally understood. And as they drifted into sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, unafraid, unashamed, and utterly, beautifully changed.